Hello and welcome to this week's Hippie Hyena and Merry Christmas. I hope it wasn't too messed up by COVID for you. And if someone you know did get COVID, I hope they and you handled it responsibly. And I'm sure you did, because you're my lovely, lovely listeners. Or at least those people who are here to listen for fun and not here to listen for, to argue with me in the comments. But you're welcome to, of course. Come and argue with me in the comments. I love it. Anyway, so, speaking of Christmas, this Christmas, Posey Parker, aka Kelly J. Keane, notorious lunatic, put out her own version of the Queen's Speech. Now, the Queen's Speech is this kind of tradition in the UK, if you're listening from somewhere else, where the Queen sort of does a speech on TV and weirdos tune into it, and she's sort of, I suppose, like, it's an attempt to sort of wrap up the year. And do you know what? The truth is, I've literally never watched it, so I don't even know what's in it. I literally have never watched the Queen's Speech once. I understand that's something that other families do. My girlfriend's grandma, I think, liked it when she was alive, but coming from a sort of ordinary British London secular family who doesn't care one jot about the royal family, or rather would rather they sort of didn't exist, we certainly weren't watching it. But the sort of idea is she sort of gives a little sort of wrap up of the year and sort of tells people to, you know, put their heads down and work harder or something, I don't know. And gives a little kind of uplifting message, maybe a moral, I think. Anyway, Posey Parker, notorious Terf, decided to do her own one, and I thought we should have a little look as to what she decided to include in it. So let's jump in.
Welcome. Merry Christmas. This is the alternative to the Queen's Speech by me, Kelly J.
God, she is just so deeply unlikable. She's so unlikable. I mean, it's got something to do with her face and her hair and maybe like her expressions and stuff. I mean, probably she can't help that. She can't help it for the most part. How she looks and how her voice sounds and that kind of stuff. That sort of stuff is largely kind of subconscious. There's this idea, I think it's in the Roald Dahl book, The Twits, that when somebody has a sort of deeply vile personality, it slowly kind of shines throughout their life, and they get more and more sort of twisted and ugly looking. And I don't really think that's true. I don't think that's true in the sense of you can get very good looking people who are extremely unpleasant, and you can get some very lovely people who look very terrible. But looking at Posey Parker here, it seems like it's pretty good evidence for that theory, and it can't be so readily dismissed, if you know what I mean.
As big names come into the fight and get ever more active, more and more people are peaking, not just in the UK, but throughout the globe. We have cases that we've won, cases that we've lost, tribunals that we've won, appeals that we've won, books that have been published, bestseller lists made. And yet here we are. For some of us, we don't feel like we stepped too many steps forward, while our government refuses to see women as a unique and important being.
I'm not really sure what she's talking about there in terms of big names. The only big name I can really think of is J.K. Rowling, which she obviously has the little I Heart J.K. Rowling poster there. I believe it's a t-shirt as well. But the thing is that when these big names like lend their support to Posey Parker's movement, because let's be clear, her movement is nothing but hatred for difference, really. It's just bigotry, just straight up bigotry. That when somebody decides to lend their name and their image towards that bigotry, all that happens is that person becomes a persona non grata. People are literally falling over themselves to not work with them ever again. You know, I mean, there's going to be, I'm not sure if it's happened yet, I'll have to check it out, a Harry Potter movie reunion, to which J.K. Rowling, the originator of the books, has been poignantly not invited to, because her name has become poison. as it should, If you go around expressing extreme bigotry, then people don't want to associate with you, and that's generally what happens. And this UK government at the moment, it sucks. It's just awful. But if they've been made to feel as if they haven't made any progress, or what really should be classified as backward steps, they haven't been able to sort of move society backwards, that can only be a good thing. And I think that's quite uplifting, really. The more downtrodden and dejected these absolute scumbags feel, the more we can feel happy about that, because it means that they're failing to make the world worse for everyone.
So, I'm going to talk about you. It would be really easy for me just to name the names that I'm sure are all on the tip of our tongues. Those people that have made bestsellers, those people that have resigned and in resignation have been victorious. But I want to talk to each and every one of you, because without you, there is nothing, no activism, no progress.
And here we can sort of basically see the beginning of the grift and how it functions. So effectively what Posey Parker and her ilk do is they take bigotry, in this case transphobia, and they try to reframe it using the language of the left. So they describe active discrimination against a vulnerable group as activism. And they talk about the fight, fighting for rights and so on, or whatever. But all that really means is fighting for the right to take away the rights of other people, or, not protecting women. What they mean by that is they want to have the right to exclude certain women. So it's about as sort of anti-feminist as you can possibly get, really, whilst using the language of feminism to describe it. It's deeply, deeply offensive the way they do this. But if Posey Parker really came on here and said exactly, didn't dress it up in this language and just stated it directly, she'd be like, hey, I hate trans people, we're trying to get them excluded from spaces where they should be allowed to be, we're trying to get them discriminated against, and not for really any good reason. If she just stated that would be sort of far less compelling to the gullible rubes. And really, the main function of somebody like Posey Parker, the service that she's providing for her audience, is they are transphobes, and in their heart of hearts they know that's wrong, but they want to be told that it's not wrong. And so it doesn't have to be convincing, really. It doesn't have to be a convincing argument as to why transphobia is acceptable. It just has to be a reason, and sort of to dress it up in a way that makes them not feel like the absolute pieces of shit that they are. Because nobody likes feeling like a piece of shit. Everyone likes to feel like they're in the right, and that's sort of the entire purpose of what Posey Parker does. That's essentially what she's selling to her audience. The momentary alleviation of the knowledge that they are total scum.
Maybe some of you didn't get to go to court, didn't get to fight your employer about your email signatures and your pronouns at work.
Oh, Jesus. And it becomes more clear what the fight, as she calls it, is actually kind of about, and how petty and kind of small it is. Email signatures with people's pronouns in. So what? Man, for God's sake. What difference does it make to you? It makes no difference. Now, I think there is a legitimate argument for why putting your preferred pronouns in your email signatures as a rule could be a problem. Now, for example, let's say there's someone who's struggling with their gender and doesn't want it to necessarily be put on public record as to what gender they're currently identifying with, because they're not entirely sure and they're going for a struggle. And perhaps having something in an email signature could arguably mean that they're having to make a public statement on that they're not comfortable making just yet, or maybe ever, which is fine too. But really, that's not the argument that these guys are making. They're making it for no particular reason. They just don't like the idea of someone identifying as female when they are judging them not to be, publicly based on nothing. It's just so petty and dumb. Who cares? Just a couple of words and an email signature that might make some other people feel more welcome and happy. But these guys, Posey Parker and her followers, etc., that's what it's really about. They just don't want those people to feel happy. That's it. They just want them to feel bad because they hate them. That's what it's about. Because it's literally no skin off your nose. If you're a person who thinks that gender is determined biologically from birth or whatever these nonsense these people put, and you feel like you're a female, then just put your pronoun as her, she, or whatever, or whatever it is. It doesn't matter. Like, it's about what you're wanting to be called yourself. So just put it down as whatever you want. You're allowed. And someone else putting something that you don't agree with doesn't affect you at all. It literally has no impact on your life whatsoever. The only impact that it has is making other people feel welcome, and that's what you don't want. Because fundamentally, Posey Parker is a bully. She's a bully who facilitates other bullies. What can we learn from this video? Well, not very much. Posey Parker is still the same bigoted trash fire that she's always been. A thoroughly vile person with thoroughly vile motivations. And she dresses them up in something that sounds vaguely more palatable to people who don't want to think about it very hard because they also share her deeply, deeply unpleasant views. She's a petty, small-minded, bullying Karen who wants to use whatever slight sliver of power she has or her powerful friends may have in order to discriminate against very vulnerable people who occupy a very small percentage of the population. And yet Posey Parker has decided to dedicate her life to doing nothing but adding more cruelty to people who are already suffering unnecessary cruelty from the nature of their unfortunate circumstances. So I never thought I'd say this, but if you're going to choose one speech to watch, one Queen's speech thing this Christmas period or next Christmas period, and for some mad reason you only have the choice between the Posey Parker alternative bigoted speech and the original Queen's speech, watch the Queen's speech, I guess. Anyway, I hope you got something out of this video, if only it's an introduction to the bizarre world of Posey Parker and her awful, awful crusade. Look after yourselves and each other. Hippie hyena out. Goodbye.